Good evening, everyone. Well, welcome to Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee meeting today, Wednesday, the 9th of March, 2022. Off we go, I say. And apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from Councillor Deach.
Councillor Deach, absence. Anyone else? I don't see Councillor Wheeler yet. I presume she'll turn up. If not, you can deal with it when it happens. Minutes of the previous meeting. Any comments, observations? I need a proposer then. Councillor Rice, a seconder. Someone to second the minutes. Councillor Alloway, thank you. All agreed? Right. Declarations of interest. Councillor Rebecca Jennings Evans.
I know, I've got a dreadful, dreadful surname.
No, it's okay. You can't beat mine, but let's carry on.
That's fine. So my declaration is the fact that it's a non-pecuniary one. My daughter was previously a Surrey Heath Sports Award winner and as such is entitled to the borough free access for county level sports people and above.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Councillor Garrett.
Just to make sure I've got everything covered, I'm going to mention, or it will be in the papers, Surrey Heath Age Concern, of which I am a trustee, council trustee on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crook. Same again? Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Thank you. Moving on. Right. Page number 15, item number 4, page number 15, which is Councillor Rebecca Jennings. Sorry, beg your pardon. Councillor Sean Garrett. Sorry, Sean. My apologies.
Thank you, Chair. As I'm sure you've all read the papers, I won't go into too much detail, as this will allow more time for questions, but I did want to pick out a few highlights. During the last 2 years, the voluntary sector and community partnerships have worked very hard, and I'm pleased to say Surrey Heath has been able to support a number of them with all their great work. The food banks have been able to access funding from the Council's Emergency Fund, Food Bank Fund, which has seen funds allocated from the Council's Community Fund grant scheme. In 2021, I know that Beeson delivered 1,150 food parcels, with the highest number of parcels being supplied on the Old Dean, St Michael's and Town wards. In partnership with Beeson, the Rotary Camberley delivered 244 Christmas hampers. Once again, there have been a number of grant schemes in place to help and support various areas of our communities and organisations. During the executive, on the 25th of January, we approved the revenue grants from the year starting the 1st of April 2020. As you all know, this funding was identified from the COMP scheme, and we have committed to support the ring-fenced organisations for the year starting the 1st of April 2023. It was agreed that we will bring back to the later executive our plans to how to fund non-ring-fenced organisations. We fully appreciate that all these organisations do within Surrey Heath and will do everything we can to keep supporting them. After the initial success of the original Poverty Working Group, we formed the Community Support Working Group. This cross-parliamentary group has been very proactive and brought a number of items back to the Executive and Main Council. We've had a few meetings of the second group, which covers Frimley, Green, Mitchett and Deepcut, and we had recently had our first meeting of Windlesham and Chobham. It is clear that there are different areas of concern in different wards, and we will continue to work together to support our communities. In November 2021, the Council, through Citizens Advice Surrey Heath, started delivering the Government's Household Support Grant Scheme, which will remain open until the 31st of March. This is designed to help families meeting the rising costs of energy and food. As of yesterday, over 1,514 grants have been awarded at a cost of £119,632, and a further £44,000 is to be allocated for the second application to qualifying families, plus new applications continue to be invited. This central government initiative has seen Surrey Heath receive just under £200,000 to help support those locally most in need. In 2021, the Home Improvements Agency agreed 127 grants, oversaw the completion of works on 82 homes, and a further 20 projects have yet to start. A further 44 requests for grants were received, which are in the process of being assessed. You can see from the up-to-date figures on the paper homelessness and rough sleeping in the borough, but I thought it would be worth noting that during the recent storms we asked the Hope Hub to provide for 4 rough sleepers with hotel accommodation, which was funded through our homelessness prevention grant. As I'm sure many of you are aware, the emergency accommodation service run by the Hope Hub in partnership with Surrey Heath is due to officially open on the 22nd of March. I was lucky enough to have been shown around it a few weeks ago by Mags Mercer. It will certainly be a great asset and will help the Hope Hub with the continuing work helping the homelessness in Surrey. The family support team have successfully supported 106 families across Surrey Heath and Runnymede. Of these families, 49 were Surrey Heath residents. In addition to this work, the family support team runs the UK resettlement scheme and most recently the Afghan citizens resettlement scheme on behalf of Surrey Heath and Runnymede. Under the ACRS, 5 families have been supported. All 5 have now found employment, 1 moving down to Chichester, another 2 have found accommodation, with another 1 to move in the next week or so, and the last family should be housed in the next month. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the officers for all the time and effort that they put in above and beyond to help support our residents and local organisations. As I've said, I've only pulled a few points out from the papers, but I wanted to allow so much time to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just regarding the resettlement schemes, and this is kind of more of a hypothetical question regarding the situation that's going on in Ukraine, and I know that the leader of the council and the executive have been incredibly supportive of it, and I think the work that this council has done on resettling refugees and the locally employed staff in Afghanistan is to be commended. And I'm just wondering, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer that Councillor Garrett will say, that if asked, or if there is a scheme regarding resettling refugees from Ukraine, will this council participate in that scheme?
Thank you, Councillor Rise, and thank you for your support of obviously the work the family support team have done. We have had a discussion on this, and as you probably are aware, these schemes are actually funded by the government, and assuming the government will fund a scheme, I am sure, having spoken to the officers, that is something we would like to take on. We're obviously limited by the accommodation we have available, but assuming we have that and we have the government funding, yes, that's something we'll certainly consider.
I note that the Ofsted report came out for Surrey Children's Services today, and they've gone from inadequate to requires improvement, which is a major step in the right direction. Would you agree with me that the work that, and those of you who've opened your council tax bills today will have seen how significant a part of the county council budget is children's services, the vast majority of which is accommodating children within the care system. Would you agree with me that we shouldn't underestimate the significance of the work that your family support team do in order to help keep children out of the care system?
Thank you, Councillor Black. I've got to be honest, this is not an area of expertise for myself. I know, having spoken to the officers on this, they obviously, and I've alluded to it in the report, they spend a lot of time supporting families. And I've also been to the Bernardo's, not the Children's Centre any longer, the Bernardo's Youth Centre in my ward, and I know that they have seen an increase in numbers as well. So certainly it's something that the support workers are working on, and yes, you're quite right. The fact that the Ofsted report is coming in better means hopefully from Surrey we'll continue to get the support. But yeah, so it is not to be underestimated the work they do. They do a sterling job under difficult circumstances, and the numbers are only going to rise, unfortunately, I believe, in the next 6 months to 12 months.
Councillor Rice.
Going back to the resettlement schemes, and I know the schemes are funded by the government, but there's lots of talk on Facebook about people opening up their homes for the refugees. Are there any restrictions on those residents offering up their homes, or is it at their own risk?
On that one, I am going to definitely go to an officer, because that is not something I must admit I would be aware of or would have any information on. Who would like to take that one? Clive, thank you. The government's currently working on its sponsorship scheme, which is to support residents, community groups and businesses to bring people into the country. And we're awaiting for details that will be published any minute. So there will be guidance for people and perhaps information we can signpost them to if that's the kind of offer that they want to make.
Thank you.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you. And it's just a separate topic now, just regarding the ward councillor grant, and obviously the report from officers that came to all councillors via email recently showed that nearly all councillors haven't used their ward councillor grant. And I'm just wondering what happens to the unused allocated money at the end of the financial year. Does it go over, or does it just kind of disappear? And I'm just wondering what happens to the allocated grant, because obviously now I have a feeling that councillors are in a mad rush to try to find organisations or to try to give the money to organisations. I was wondering, does that money carry over to next year?
The answer to your question is no. It was decided at the executive in, I think it was January, that we wouldn't roll it over. And the reason for that was exactly what you said. A number of councils haven't used their money. But what Breda and Jane have experienced in the last 2 weeks is a sudden inundation of... so the report that came out was dated the 24th of February, and I know for a fact within the last 2 weeks there's been a lot more. So that certainly is a lot higher than it was. But in answer to your question, anything, it's basically spend it or lose it. And also just bear in mind that because we're now, as of tomorrow, in Purda, it can't be issued after the 10th of March, although anything that comes in will be obviously still looked at.
All right.
So just to confirm, obviously I know we're going into Purda, so the deadline I think to spend it is the 31st of March is to spend it, but it won't get spent until after the by-election. So any applications that come in before the 31st of March will count in the allocation that we have. And obviously I noted in the report that it was up to £2,500. It goes back to £1,500 next year because the £2,500 was a carryover from the pandemic, I believe. Is that correct?
Right, so I don't know we've agreed that we will run it next year, and I know Jane's got a hand up, so I'm sure she will answer that. And obviously Louise as well, so I will pick one of those. But in answer to your question, it has to be applied for by the 31st of March. And then if it hasn't been, but it won't be spent until after the 14th of April. But every one of you would like?
So yeah, just to confirm that yes, the amount will go back to zero, and it will be 1,500 from the 1st of April.
Jane,
Sorry. Yeah, actually, to confirm, Louise is absolutely correct. Applications can come in as far as sort of 11:59 on the 31st of March, and they will still be received within this financial year. And the processing can happen into the next financial year. The important thing is that it's received before the 1st of April.
thank you. Councillor Bates, sorry, Jordan.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask about the resettlement programme as well, and just to seek confirmation, I suppose, that the scheme that was initially set up, it was in relation to Syrian refugees, as I recall, and that we have 5 families as indicated in the report, but it was an agreement at that stage to have up to 10. So I just want to be reassured that those 5 families, because Syria is not so much in the news, but the situation there is still terrible. And in fact, I had a meeting yesterday where somebody was talking about it. So I just want to make sure that if the Syrian families are in need, that we haven't forgotten that, that we do continue to look for opportunities for Syrian families, as well as the sad situation of Afghan families. That was a fantastic success, I have to say. based on all the knowledge that I know there's a lot of people did a lot of work. That work is still ongoing, but I do know that, as is indicated in the report, those families have resettled really well. So I think a lot of credit can go to those involved in relation to that. I just want to make sure that others have that opportunity too.
Thank you, Councillor Bates, and thank you for your comments about the Afghan resettlement. I thought this might come up, so I've actually pulled out the relevant papers from 2016-17. And from what I can see, it was agreed in 2016 that we would settle 2 families per year for the next total of 5 years. And my understanding is that was across Runnymede and Surrey Heath. And my also understanding is we have housed 10 families in that period of time. I'm wondering if, Clive, if you could confirm or deny that. We have housed the 10, yeah? Okay, so we have housed 10 families within that period of time. And I understand we're still, if they come to us, we're still looking to house them. Is that right?
So the Syrian scheme has come to an end now, and it's been all pulled into one called the UK Resettlement Scheme. And yes, we're watching for information on the tariffs and the support the council gets to carry on doing that work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? No. Oh, sorry.
It's not really a question, but it was picking up on what Councillor White said, and obviously talking about the Ukraine at the moment. I've had quite a lot of people that have offered rooms and via Facebook, and probably Clive as well will know and state that it is difficult because there's so much red tape and people need to be DBS checked, and a lot of the residents didn't understand that. They thought they could just open their homes and welcome people in, and I've explained we have to do a quick process but a very clear process before that can happen. So likewise, if anyone asks, just feed that back, that it has to be done correctly.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I was watching television, I felt the same. We got rooms in our house. I happily open it up, but I know the red tape involved, so it takes a bit of time. And can I congratulate you, Councillor Crook, on all the hard work you've done recently, getting the food across. Well done. Well done to you. Thank you. First and foremost, your report is fantastic, really well done, and you do a great job here. One observation I have is on the lottery funding. It would be good for the committee members to see how it's been spent and the organizations we have actually given the money to. I know I have got it because I have, at the chairman's briefing, it was brought up, so I was given that listing. It would be good for the committee members to look at that as well, because they may have views and they may want to discuss it with their ward, with their residents. Second observation I have for you, Councillor Garrett, is Hope Hub. I mean, Hope Hub is an organization I wholeheartedly support, and Hope Hub gets money from various pots within the council. Again, it would be good to see where the pots of money and under Hope Hub, how much money they have received. Again, I have the information because it was brought up at the chairman's briefing, but it'll be good for the committee members to have sight of that as well. Thank you very much. If there are no questions, oh, sorry.
Can I just pick up on those 2 points?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. I totally understand what you're saying. And if I know Jane's on the call, I know she's obviously supplied you information which you had at the briefing, and I don't see any reason why there was a breakdown for Hope Hub as well. I don't think there's any reason why that can't go out to councillors, so we can organise that to be sent out in the next week or so.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Well done again. Right, move. Sorry, Councillor Bates.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. I just want to go back to the Syrian refugee point that was made. I've gone back to the meeting that was referred to in 2016, which was the executive. I'm looking at it right now. And in fact, it doesn't say anything about joint work with Runnymede at all. So unless that happens afterwards, but certainly the paperwork that I'm looking at did say 10 families. to 2 households in the coming year over the next, and then 8 over the next 4 years, because Runnymede were going to do a separate 10. So I just want to, again, I appreciate that that scheme may have finished in its current guise and it's been wrapped up within within the wider scheme, but I just don't want us to think that we have actually achieved that, but at least not on the paperwork from 2016. So unless it was updated afterwards, but that isn't what was agreed in 2016. So I think Councillor Garrett may have inadvertently, I'm sure he didn't realise that, but that doesn't appear to be what was actually resolved at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. So it may be because my understanding is that Runnymede and Surrey Heath worked together, and maybe when the paper was done, it was just Surrey Heath. So maybe someone can clarify that for me. Clive, is it something? Oh, okay.
I wasn't, Chairman, through you, I wasn't here either, but I think my understanding is right, that our team support both families and accommodation both in Surrey Heath and Runnymede. So when the team accommodate 10 families, they're accommodating, I guess, the 10 across those 2 councils, because they work across both councils.
What I will do is I have got the papers here, Councillor Bates, and I do see what you're saying. It does say 10 and it says Surrey Heath. So what I will do is I will take that away as an action for myself, and I will dig into that a little bit further, and I will come back to you personally.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I can't see any. Moving on. Agenda item, I believe it's 5. And it's Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, committee members, officers and members of the public who are joining us online this evening. I intend to keep my introduction short, as I hope that everyone has had a chance to read over the report. I'd like to start by thanking my team that are here to support me this evening and answer any technical questions you may have. So I'd like to welcome Sue McCubbin, Ben Sword, Nick Stevens and Louise Livingstone from this council. And also I'm delighted to welcome Rebecca Turner from Glendale and Duncan Mackay from Places Leisure, and would like to thank them both for joining us this evening. I'm hugely proud and extremely grateful to my team for delivering some excellent projects this year. This year has been really productive and, amongst other things, has seen the delivery of the £22 million leisure centre, the site security measures, the Bench of Hope and the physical activity strategy, to name but a few, all of which are delivering real and tangible benefits to our residents and are laid out into the report. So ultimately, without further ado, would anybody like to ask me a question?
Sorry, Councillor Rice first and then Councillor Tapper.
Thank you very much. It's just regarding, I've raised this question before regarding the fees on personal trainers using public spaces. And I saw recently that there was a social media post that had gone out that was re-advertising the requirement of personal trainers to get a licence. I'm a bit I find it a bit not heavy-handed. I find it's a bit pointless, really, because I'm wondering how many personal trainers actually get the licence, and how is it then actually policed? So while there is this fee which we expect personal trainers to pay, actually how many of them actually do pay it? And if those who do not pay it, how do we don't have enough staff members to be at every single green space the borough has 24 hours a day. How do we actually police that? And then that's kind of, I really want to see, while we have it, is it actually working, and is it actually a worthwhile thing to continue to have? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll answer as much as I can, and then I will pass over to an officer, because obviously you've got some technical questions there. So my understanding is that the reason it's in place is because ultimately our green spaces, firstly, we have to maintain. So after use, there's obviously the potential issues, littering, grass issues, whatever that may be. But there's also additionally the risk of health and safety. For example, if somebody, a passerby, was to be injured while something was going on within the park, then who becomes liable if there's an issue? So we have these in place to protect all of our residents, not just those that are there undertaking the activity classes. But as to regards to how many and how we enforce it, I'm going to hand over to Sue.
Thank you very much. Another reason that we do ask for people to enter into a licence is we want their insurance details as well, and to know that they're qualified to do what they're actually saying that they need to do in the park, or teaching others, because there's a liability there for us if something does go wrong, even though they're operating the class, but it would then fall to our insurance instead of theirs, perhaps. We have probably in the region of about 20 licences. I can confirm exact numbers because they do fluctuate. And so there's a balancing act, because if 20 people are paying for their group and others aren't, is that fair on the people that are honest, open and come forward and pay for their permit to operate? We do police. A lot of that is done via social media, because people advertise their groups, because obviously we want people to go, and if we go, someone's operating in Heatherside and we don't know about that, then we know their times, their dates, how much they're charging, because it's all, usually on social media. So then we approach those groups, and that's how we tend to police. We are actually about to embark on another exercise with the Green Space team, who are going to help us sort of jump in on the parks and actually go through that process in every park to see what we can find out, and actually police the whole system, if you like. I think that might have covered your answers.
Go for it.
Just on the same point. So I guess my second question, my supplementary question is, do we find that people avoid getting a licence because they don't want to pay it, which I guess there will be people that won't want to do it, or do people avoid it because, for example, I can't remember the cost, in my opinion, was prohibitive, but that could just be me. But I'm just wondering, do people avoid it because they can't afford to pay it? And I'm just wondering, is the cost prohibitive for it? Because I'm going to say a figure, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that it was about £4,000 for a year. That's a figure I remember. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I do apologise, and I will retract that. But I do, if Ms. McGovern could tell me how much the licence is for a year, I would be appreciative. Because
Well, I was just going to say,
please.
firstly, no, we're not aware of people that are avoiding taking it out. With regards to how much it pays for the year, that's not a figure that I'm familiar with.
I'm going to look it up in a second so I can confirm it exactly, but we actually introduced a different way of paying for it last year, just before it became a free for 6 months scenario, because we did think that it maybe was prohibitive. So what we wanted to do is introduce a scheme that meant that people could almost pay as they go, and set up a system that was suitable for them, so they could pay monthly, quarterly or annually. And also that way it could also go on direct debit, which meant that also reduced officer time in issuing invoices, chasing invoices, and that scenario happening as well. So it was actually intended to be more effective for everybody. I'll confirm the rates in just a minute, because I need to look them up, because I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Councillor Tepper.
Thank you, Chair. About 4 years ago, on Heatherside, on the Maltway actually, there was an outbreak of Japanese knotweed. Over the past 4 years, I've become somewhat knowledgeable about what Japanese knotweed is and how invasive it can be. It has been treated and retreated over that period of time. Also, the ball's been chucked backwards and forwards between whether it's county that's supposed to look after it. It's on a grass verge, whether it's county's responsibility or whether it's borough's responsibility. But last year, it appeared that the problem had been resolved until I noticed on my morning run that there'd been an outbreak, or apparent outbreak, just a couple of metres further away. What I saw looked every bit exactly identical to the previous outbreak. Red zigzag stems, the heart-shaped leaves. So I referred it to the council, and presumably it was referred by them to Glendale for treatment. They came back and insisted it wasn't Japanese knotweed. And the next thing I find is that the whole of that grass area there had been mowed flat. Now, as we believe, that outbreak originally came from stray bits that came off the lorries, carting it away from Mindenhurst, where there is huge amounts of outbreak. You can understand how easily this stuff spreads itself. And I was rather upset to find out how it appeared to be treated. I did report the matter and said that I would be keeping an eye on this situation this spring when the growing season starts again. As yet, nothing has started growing again, but if it does, can we have an assurance that this will be treated a little more seriously, because if this is not dealt with properly, it's just going to spread and spread wider and wider, and this is right on the doorstep of residents' gardens, and we do not want this spreading into their gardens. So I wonder, has internally any consideration been given to how long this must be treated? Because originally it was said it would only be treated for 2 years. Can we have some guarantees that this will be treated as long as there is an outbreak that needs to be treated, and not after 2 years say, we're washing our hands of this? Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to my attention, Councillor Tapper. In answer to your question, as you're well aware, because you asked a very similar question last year on knotweed, it is our most prolific weed in the borough. As you know, we treat it at least twice a year with, unfortunately, chemicals. We try to be as environmentally friendly as possible, Councillor Galliford, but in this particular instance, it's not always possible. I am sure that if you've raised it with Glendale, I would hope that they certainly would be treating this as seriously as it is, because it is an invasive species. So, as you know, we've got 11 sites across the borough. We do take responsibility for treating it on behalf of Surrey County Council, and we have currently got 6 Surrey Heath sites and 5 Surrey County sites that we treat.
May I just ask, until proved otherwise, is the site on the Maltway still considered to be one of those sites?
I'd have to refer that to Rebecca. You? Sue.
Good evening. Actually, just to confirm, that site that you're referring to is actually MOD land.
I think you'll find that's on the other side of the Maltway. We're talking about the Heather side of the Maltway. My understanding is MOD land actually ends at the ditch on the other side of the Maltway. In other words, the Chobham Bridges side of the Maltway. We're talking here about the residential side of the Maltway, and my understanding is that that verge is part of council's responsibility and is not MOD land. Thank you.
Could I suggest that you actually look it up and then give a written reply to Councillor Tapper? That may be useful.
Happy to do that, because
I'm sort of going across to the next item, which is the capital programme figures, Q3, but there's a line in there that is in your portfolio, which is Whitmore Road play area, and there's an amount of £25,000 there. One, I need to know that that amount is still active and that it will be used for that play area, and is there any update that the work will be done on that play area, because I believe there was a dispute as to who actually owned the land or the play area. So I just need to know what's happening with that area.
Thank you, Councillor White. So the land transfer between Surrey County Council and Surrey Heath Borough Council never happened at the time of the development, and the negotiations have been on and off for some years. However, the details to allow the transfer have actually now been finalised, and the draft transfer document has been circulated, but we're awaiting a response to an issue on drainage and water, so we haven't got a final date yet. But in that negotiation, there's actually 40,000 plus VAT that's been put aside for the play area.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman first.
Yes, thank you. It's a comment, Chairman, if I can. It's about Places Leisure, and what a good decision that was. It's such a huge success beyond this borough as well. I watch it on social media. I hear it from lots of residents across the borough. It's so well run, and it just suits people of all ages. We've got our grandsons on the climbing walls, although they're sort of 6 foot tall, but it accommodates everybody, and I think, you know, well done.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. That's very kind of you to say, and I'm sure that Duncan McKay will take that back to the team. I'm delighted, and I think I can say fairly that it's exceeded all expectations on behalf of Surrey Heath and Places Leisure.
I think Mr. Mackay can show his face. I know him personally.
Evening, Councillor. So yeah, thank you very much for that very positive comments and feedback. Thank you very much indeed.
Well done, Duncan.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for being late. I've got two questions. One, can I just confirm that the area that pings, you think you have problems with highways and Surrey Heath, try Surrey Heath highways and the water, Natural England or whoever it is that looks after waterways for Japanese knotweed. Can I just confirm that that will be receiving another treatment this year? I believe that we did get round to treating it eventually last year, but just to check that that's on the schedule. And then the other matter just to bring up, can we have confirmation that Places Leisure is not receiving any grants or financial assistance ongoing, given the degree of their success? Thank you.
So in answer to your first question, Councillor Wheeler, the land actually was in private ownership. I assume you're referring to the land by the side of the River Bourne and the Sang? The two areas? Yeah. So the land was in private ownership, and the Green Space did a letter drop with the backing of the Environment Agency to request that it was treated. The Environment Agency then pursued the enforcement to ensure that it happened. And I'm sure that if it requires a further treatment, then we'd be happy to support that once again.
Would you like to answer the second part of the question, please?
Yes, by all means. So I know that Places for Leisure obviously asked originally for us to support, but actually they've done so well with their opening, and as I said, exceeded all expectations, that there's been no need to draw upon that, and I don't think there are plans to currently, but I'm sure it would come back to this council if needs be.
Thank you for that. That question was one of mine. It's fine. Councillor Rice, then Councillor Tapper.
I just want to go back to my earlier statement and just to correct myself. I did look up, and I think I must have been remembering incorrectly, so I do apologise for that. What I would ask regarding the permits, if, as officer said, that there was only 20, I would ask, is that an efficient scheme? Because there are more like, there is definitely more than 20 personal trainers in Surrey Heath using green spaces. So my question is that scheme, why are we not getting those people signing up to the scheme? If that's the requirement, and are we not selling it correctly? Is it cost prohibitive, or people just saying, I don't need to pay it because they don't ever police it? So I'm just wondering, is there a more holistic way of ensuring that we get the information that you say? Because I agree with Councillor Jennings-Evans that it's essential that we ensure that we have the information regarding insurance, because if a personal trainer is using a space, it is the personal trainer's responsibility. So I'm just wondering if there's more of a way of perhaps having a voluntary scheme of self-identification of personal trainers, that they can actually say, I am a personal trainer, I don't always use the green spaces, but I want to register with the council to say I've got this insurance. Then that actually gives the council a list of the personal trainers operating in the area. So that's why I would say, rather than just having the scheme of paying.
If I stop you there, Councillor Rice, we did do that.
Thank you for that. Can I also add something to what Councillor Rice said? Because as we know, the council is looking to increase revenue. It's very, very important that Mr. Stevens' team actually takes this seriously, because it may be £40 or £50, whatever the figure is, it all adds up. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm delighted to see that the project to protect our green spaces against illegal invasion is progressing, and that more green spaces have been identified for the next phase of work. I was a little surprised that I had to learn about this only by reading the agenda. I would have thought that the outcome of the survey of residents and what was decided as the residents' preference would have been notified to the councillors of the ward concerned. Can I please have some assurance that we will be notified on the ongoing progress of this project? I note that the latest stage of the exercises that the works are currently being priced. Can we please be notified what bids have been put forward to carry out this work and when the work is likely to be carried out? I wouldn't like to be in the situation where we have not been able to advise our residents in advance of the progress and what to expect. Thank you.
Councillor Tapper, can I ask you to be a little bit more specific about which ward you're specifically referring to? Because as far as I'm aware, and I've just had confirmation from my officers, councillors are informed of the consultation that goes on and the results of that and what implementation is done. And the
yes, thank you.
pricing was
This
in the
is
original
Heatherside
document.
Ward. Yes, we were kept well informed about the progress of the installation of the bunds around Heatherside Recreation Ground, and that worked very well. This is the second phase, which is Chelsmore Park, the green space right at the heart of that particular community. I was aware that a resident survey was being carried out, and I had information about the format of the survey and when that would be going out, and I was able to notify our residents to expect this and request them to respond. That was the last we heard of it. Neither of my two colleagues have heard any more about this. Certainly not that the survey had been completed, nor about the decisions that had been made by the residents as to what their preference was. This may be simply an omission. It might be an oversight. It's quite possible. But can we please, as this progress of this project takes place, be notified in a timely manner about that progress and what we can notify our residents of? Thank you.
That's absolutely fine, Councillor Tapper. I'll ask the team to go away and take that on board and act appropriately.
Sorry, Councillor Hawkins and then Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I actually publicly thank the Green Space team for the sterling work they did in the aftermath of the great storm of 22. It was outstanding, I have to say, and I know they were at it almost 24 hours a day. There is still a tree to be attended to in Southcote Park, leaning against the hedges on the Gulf. And there are a couple of large trees. Yes, this is an angle. There are a couple of large trees down the Portsmouth Road, which I think Mr McCubbin will see frequently. I'm not quite sure whether they fall within the green space or work has been started but hasn't finished. If those are waiting for action from county, because I'm not sure whose trees they are, if Ms McCubbin could tell me, I will pick that one up, or if it's work in hand, I'll step back. Thank you, Chairman.
The Portsmouth Road trees are county trees. The ones in Southcote Park are on the list, but they are sectioned off, so they're safe at the moment. But we're going through risk priority trees, but they are aware of it and they're on it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, if there are no more... Oh, sorry, Councillor Rice. And the chairman will have his chance.
Thank you. I do... Just one final point on my seemingly obsessive point tonight. Regarding personal trainers. I don't even have a personal trainer, as you can tell. But just regarding the voluntary side of the scheme, I was just wondering, can that be clearly communicated to residents? I understand that the aim is to get people to sign up for the licence, but if we can get, if we actually are able to say, do this instead, then that gives us the information. Can that just be stress when we do our social media posts regarding it, that we actually have a point of this is also that there's a voluntary scheme as well.
I'm getting a nod from Louise Livingston, so I'm sure that can be taken on board.
Thank you very much. Okay, now it's the chairman's turn. This is the way I run my committees. I give everybody a good shout first. A couple of things for Mr. Stevens and then for possibly Ben, who is already up there. I know I've got some of the replies addressed towards you, but I know where the replies are coming from. Regarding the dog walking in Watchetts Park, I know I've had the reply back. It'll be interesting for the other committee members to know what the answer is. The question is, when did it happen? How much money we collect, so on and so forth. That's point one. Point two is, we are going off the script like Councillor White there, this is a sort of a selfish thing. Frimley Green tennis court, because that is in a dire straits. The third point I have, I was actually at Watchett's over the weekend watching rugby. The one part of the court is done. It looks absolutely fabulous. It is fully occupied. The other part is not done. It looks a bit, we can maybe make more money out of it if we do it properly. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So in answer to your first question on the dog exercise, we've got 2 trials, 3-month trials going on. One is at Lightwater Country Park, one is at Watchett's. And at Watchett's, they're obviously using the grass tennis court that was used up, and we've got about 14 people signed up currently for the trials that we're doing. It's always been in a closed space that was always hireable, and for some reason, unfortunately, people were managing to access it without using proper means, shall we say. And as a result, this has been looked at as a way that we can raise revenue that you were looking at earlier, and it accommodates, to be honest, we've got a lot of residents who are now contacting us to say that they have either puppies or dogs that have anxiety or behavioural issues or poor recall, and they want somewhere that they can go that the animal and the owner feel safe that they're there. So that's why we're currently doing it, and obviously at the end of the trial we'll see whether it can become a permanent thing or not.
Interrupt you just for a moment. I don't know how much consultation took place there. It would be a good idea if you're going to expand it to actually have a proper consultation with the councillors and some of the residents, because some people like it, some people don't. So be aware there has been a little bit of dissatisfaction from some parts of the community.
I think you're always going to get a conflict over use, but I mean, as a site that was bookable previously on a lockable court, I can tell you that the rent that we got from that was minimal because it was hired very little. So if it was kept true to its use, this is a better use of space, but of course we will always consider, getting feedback, not just from residents who aren't using it, but from those that are. With regards to the Frimley tennis court, I'm going to ask you politely to hold that thought, because we have hopefully some very good news coming this way that I'm hoping to bring to the executive as I reach for my glasses so I can see everybody. The LTA have very kindly, we've been negotiating a grant that has the potential to see the refurbishment of not just Frimley, but Mitchett and Watchett's. So, as I said, I'm going to be bringing that to the executive in the not too distant future. The LTA will get their funding in April. They are then in a position to finally agree with us what we can do, and I will be bringing that to the executive. And I anticipate and I hope very much that Frimley tennis courts will be part of that. What was your last section of that question?
That's fine. I was talking about the second half of the Watchett's.
Oh, yes, and that's purely been done because you have to do it on a rotational basis, because you don't want the courts to be completely out of use, so therefore you want the users to be able to use at least part, and it's been rotated so that whilst 2 are out, 2 are in use, to try and make best use of the facility for the residents.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I also say on the Frimley, this is a confusion. The Frimley Tennis Club is actually in Watchett's. Frimley Green is different, so we have to be very careful what we say. Maybe we should name, we should rename Watchett's Tennis Club. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, very good report, Councillor Jennings-Evans. Superb work. Well done. Keep it up.
Thank you. And thank you mostly to my team. I really appreciate everything that they've done this year.
Moving on. Okay, off we go. Agenda item 6. Councillor Robin Perry, Performance of Finance Scrutiny Capital Program. Councillor Robin Perry, you're on Zoom. If not, I'm going to hand it over to the officer in charge, Mr. Watson.
Good afternoon, or good evening, Chair and Councillors. What you have here, if I can refer you to Agenda Supplement 2 that was sent out at the start of this week. The first one we have to talk about is the revenue report, which is our quarterly revenue report at the end of quarter 3, being the 31st of December 2021. What we're reporting here is a improvement in the position where we were against the quarter 2 report, which was in September, and we're now predicting at the end of the year an overspend on the council budgets of £0.893 million, or £893,000. This compares favourably against the position that was reported at the end of quarter 2 of over £1.6 million, and represents the amount of work that has gone on by council officers around containing and curbing some of the expenditure we've had and concentrating our thoughts on where we need to be at the end of the year. And although the forecast we're getting from the services at this point is just under £900,000, I am fairly confident the work continues as it has done since the start of the new calendar year. We will see an even better improving position going forward. The report is done at a reasonably high level, and it does show some of the major variances, both favourable and unfavourable, across the service areas. It is done in the old structure of the council, because that is how the budgets were set at the start of the year, and that is how we monitor against it. The new structure will form the basis for the monitoring reports in the next financial year. And I'll throw it open to questions at this point on the revenue report.
This time the chair will take the first question. Mr. Watson, Mr. Perry is, Councillor Perry is there, but I think Councillor Perry, if you can answer it, that's fine. If not, I will actually refer this to Mr. Watson, because I know Mr. Watson is new and he's looked at these numbers carefully. I want to refer you back, Mr. Watson, to the budgets we set in 21-22. The date it came to exec on the 16th of February 21, then to the full council on the 24th of February 21. This is for the 21-22 year we are in. The budget at that time was set at the £14,069,000. Now, what disappoints me, truly does disappoint me, this is the second set of numbers we are looking at for during the period for 21-22. But first set of numbers was actually came to the PNF as agenda item 6A on the, I don't know exact date, but there is a report. It was a little bit before your time, Mr. Watson. The other budget figure reflects 11,783,000, very different to the 14 million, which is what we set, the council passed. Then this quarter, 9 months later, this budget figure shows 12 million. There's a massive difference. I mean, I try to, I like to think I'm a decent bookkeeper. Don't call me an accountant, I'll be a bookkeeper on this occasion. I do add up, but I can't compare like with like here. I know I'm doing apples, oranges, melons, I'm all over the place. And before you answer that, because I think what I'm going to ask you to do, please, is reassess what's been done over the last 9 months, and then compare it back to the budget which the council set. I'm surprised, Councillor Perry, you're there, you didn't pick this up. I mean, you're the finance exec. In fact, I'm surprised the council leader is not here. I'm not making a political statement, I promise I'm not. because these are numbers and the council is struggling for CAM. We continually say we don't have any money. And we are not comparing like with like. We are all over the shop. It is shocking, truly, truly shocking. I picked it up only this evening or this afternoon because the report was published yesterday. I was busy, so I was reviewing it today. If not, I would have given you the heads up at the chairman's briefing, so you would have come prepared. Because this is simply not acceptable. I hope, Councillor Perry, you're listening to this, because it's important you get to grips with this, where this is not good enough. And the other point, I want to make one final point on this before I hand it to the other committee members. When we were looking at these numbers last 6 months earlier on this is the famous page 28 on that report. We actually looked at, sorry, printing is a bit, we looked at Jaipur. There was an item on Jaipur on page number 28, 1.9 million and 1.5 million. The other variance on that particular one, investment development variance, was 2 million odd pounds, negative variance. That's my reading of the way it's done here. I mean, here it's gone all over the place. I'm sorry. I honestly believe this report should come back to us properly now. There could be a positive variance. I'm not saying there is not going to be a positive or a negative variance. I'm not going to make a judgment on it. It's impossible to compare this report with anything. 3 different numbers, 3 different budget numbers, but the council passes one budget. Maybe CEO, would you be good enough to take this up and have a good look at it for me, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think what's important about the budget monitoring report that's in front of members is that I think it does provide a clear account of how the council spending has come down since the last budget monitoring report, but it is still projecting a significant overspend. And I think we've had the benefit of the presentation by the Director of Finance on the council's finances and the reasons why the council is facing such a significant overspend. But I think members have also heard about the action that's been taken to bring costs down in the current year by focusing on essential expenditure and identifying opportunities for efficiency savings. Unfortunately, that work is feeding in and has fed into the budget for next year. There is a piece of work to do for our new Director of Finance to reconcile these figures back to the figures that were presented earlier. He wasn't here at the time, so that's something I know that he'll certainly want to do. But I want to make sure that members have the opportunity to ask questions on this report that's in front of members, because there's a lot of really useful information in here. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I accept what you say. I'm on the same side as you are. Yes, the council is going through a torrid time, and Mr. Watson has come in and has been getting to grips with issues, which is welcome. At the same time, we can only compare with one set of numbers. We can't compare with 2 different or 3 different sets of numbers. I mean, having been a finance director, no, not being a bookkeeper, a proper job man, I'm actually saying this is serious. We need to actually have one set of numbers to compare like with like. I do appreciate what you're saying. We made savings, we'll continue to make savings. I welcome it, and as you know, I encourage that all the time. So that's not the point here. Point here is that councillors here need to understand what we are comparing numbers like with like or not. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Rice afterwards.
Thank you. If I could just raise a couple of queries. We've just heard from Councillor Jennings-Evans that the management fees payable to Leisure Centre and the cost of a Places Leisure Centre actually hasn't been needed. And yet within this budget, we've got a budget figure of 191,000 adverse. So I wonder if we could have a little bit of an explanation about that, please. And then I also wonder if we could have an explanation which has come through from my local council tax bills this morning and have noted the fact that the chief executive expenditure has gone up from 162,000 to 236,000, which is an increase of circa 45%. And they just asked me to inquire of an explanation around that, please. And then the other point, again in here, was a £78,000 adverse figure on the collection of green waste in the current financial year. So I appreciate that's because we're not charging people, but I just wondered what figure is representational in there of refunds that we've given to people, and whether or not that's been taken into consideration. Thank you.
There are 3 points here. There are 3 points. I must also confess, as I was leaving for this meeting, I had a call from a resident asking about the 262,000. So I'm going to leave that for the chief exec to answer. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm actually going to suggest that I respond to the Places Leisure question because it predates our Director of Finance, and so I think that would be helpful for me to respond. The second question relating to the Chief Executive, I'm actually going to invite the Director of Finance to respond to that one. I think that's the only fair thing to do. Green waste, I can answer or Bob can answer, but as it follows the next question, he might well want to do that. So in relation to Places Leisure, as the pandemic hit and the lockdown occurred, leisure companies across the country approached local authority clients to seek additional funding. And their argument was that their service was curtailed through no fault of their own, and they were losing money on those contracts. And many councils across the country increased the funding significantly to their leisure providers in response to that problem. So a lot of money. Now, we were very fortunate in Surrey Heath because we didn't have a leisure service that was operating at the time. But Places Leisure, concerned about what the future climate would look like, did approach the council and did ask us to fund them additional money to take into account that when they did open, that there may be some ongoing impacts of the pandemic and the lockdown that could impact negatively on the numbers of people using their centre. The council took the opposite view. The council took the view that actually when the centre opens, the lockdown will be over and people will be rushing back to going back to the gym and getting regular exercise. And in the event, the council's view was actually what happened. And so Places Leisure wrote to the council and said we will no longer be seeking additional funding for the council as a result of our concerns about the impact of lockdown, which is a great outcome. And it was a testament to the officers for holding the ground and having such faith in how successful the service would be. The issue highlighted in this report relates to the structure of the contract the council entered into with Places Leisure. And that contract, and this is very common with these sorts of arrangements, the council pays the contractor in the early years, and because it's recognised generally that it takes a while to build up membership, to deal with all the teething problems, and to enable the contractor to pay off some of their initial costs. And so our contract is profiled in the early years where we pay them, and then in the later years where they pay us significantly larger sums of money. And all we're seeing here is that profile working its way through. Now, that's not a decision that was taken this year or last year. It was a decision taken as part of the tender process and the negotiation of the contract with Places Leisure. And as I said, it's a common arrangement across the leisure industry. I hope that clarifies that point. I'm going to invite, through you, Chair, the Director of Finance, Mr. Watson, to respond to the question about the Chief Executive's salary.
Thank you very much. If I could just address the earlier questions from the Chair, I will provide a reconciliation of the budget where the budget moves. Quite often, well, it's guaranteed that the budget set in February will move between that and the budget that starts the year in April for various reasons that occur. But we should be able to, and we will provide ability to reconcile that because budget numbers need to be reconciled to show where we get to. So I will undertake to provide to the committee a reconciliation of the movement from the February budget to the budgets reported here today. I believe on the J-put I've answered that question already and provided a written report to the committee. I'm happy to reshare that again if you wish me to. Moving on to Councillor Wheeler's questions. Yes, the Chief Executive is quite right on the management fee, other than the fact that actually the government gave guidance that we were to pay support to our providers around the leisure contracts. There was 2 procurement policy notices issued in 2020, and I know the council I was working for at the time had a contractual obligation as well with Places Leisure to make up any deficit. So it was refreshing to come here at Surrey Heath and see we weren't paying them a large amount of money compared to what my other council was paying beforehand. And that was always under open book arrangements anyway. So if anybody's going to claim money off local authorities, they had to provide open book accounting, which we would have done and asked for from Places if they continued to chase us for extra money. But the management fee is as per profiled, and obviously it's a good profile as well, because I've seen the future years, which is even better. So on to the Chief Executive area, and it's key to understand here, we're not talking about the Chief Executive, we're talking about the Chief Executive's department. And as with most councils, they have a department that covers the central corporate part of the council. Some call it the corporate core, some call it the Chief Executive's department. But what you hold in there is not just the Chief Executive's costs and single salary, but it's also the other costs around the administration of the strategic area of the council. And following the review of the strategic structure of the council earlier this year, it was agreed that certain costs of the whole corporate management team are classed as strategic and therefore put in the Chief Executive's area. And that's what sees the increase of nearly £76,000 in that budget. So it is not an increase in the Chief Executive's personal salary, it is the increase in the strategic management costs of the council, which allows us to reflect better when reporting our accounts the element that is strategic in the council rather than just attributing it to their own service areas. And the pay salary structure of the council is actually published online in our pay performance report that comes out annually and will be in the annual statement of accounts when the accounts are closed. So hopefully that answers that question, but I'll take supplementaries on it. The other one was the green waste question. What we're seeing here is a adverse variance against what we expected as income around the green waste. So whereas we used to expect a certain growth in the green waste service throughout the year, obviously once we stopped collecting green waste, people stopped joining the scheme. Some people did leave the scheme. So what we have in the budget for next year is £300,000 for rebates that we will offer back to people in the who are on the scheme. So that comes out. So those that have paid already this year, we haven't given them a refund. We haven't given them, but what we will give them is a rebate against next year's charge, and that's where the main impact of it is. But this adverse variance here is currently in the position where we have a shortage of income because people haven't joined the scheme and taken up more, and that's what it is. I know the Joint Waste Services team and the council's legal team are in negotiations with Amy around seeking them to compensate us for this error, or not error, but this non-collection, and that's negotiable at this point in time. So the prudent approach that I've taken is I've not reported any assumption that we will get anything back from Amy in this financial year. And it actually would suit me better if we did get anything back, it's in next financial year to offset the cost in next year.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Just a supplementary on the Chief Executive, and I'm glad that there is a very comprehensive answer because I too have had residents complaining about this. They've looked at their breakthrough of the council tax and it says Chief Executive. £162,000 to £236,000. And I accept that the chief executive has not got a 45% pay increase, because I'm pretty sure, based on previous actions of this council, that would have come before full council. And I certainly haven't voted on that one. I think what would be essential for this, and I would actually seek that there's a clarification put out publicly, that this is not the chief executive's salary, but this is the chief executive's office and the staff that goes in that office and the associated cost. Because if you look at the breakdown of the cost of services, everything else is broken down by its department, and then it just says chief executive at the top. And anyone just looking at that would assume that it's been a massive pay increase. So I think it's really important, especially regarding the pay of the chief executive, which has an issue of trust with residents of this council. I think it's essential, it's imperative that we are always clear on any money regarding the chief executive. And I do apologise to the chief executive that it places a lot of accountability onto him regarding this. But I would very much like a clarification published, and it's always clear that we understand the concerns residents have regarding the pay of the senior officers of this council. And I think it's actually important that we actually demonstrate the benefit the senior officers of the council actually bring to the borough. And that's really the key. If people see this and they go, oh, they've just given him a massive pay rise and he's only been in the job a year, and it breaks down the trust of the council. And that's my rant there.
Thank you for the rant, because you did most of my ranting. It's very important what Councillor Rice says, because the council unfortunately went through a period for the new chief exec and for the new section 1 for one officer, where there was an incident, the whole thing went pear-shaped. And we have to be very clear with the residents. I know that's the way we have done it. I think a clarification is essential that we put it out there. Yes, sorry. Can I give the officer a chance to reply back? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We have already updated the version of the leaflet that is on our website to clarify that. And yes, fully understand where we are, and with perfect 2020 hindsight, we would have called it the Office of the Chief Executive or something else. Again, it's just following on from where we had previously to try and get in there. But no, recognise the concerns of the residents, and I would point out potentially that the pay rise that's been agreed means the Chief Executive gets the lowest percentage pay rise in the council, not the highest.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes,
CEO needs to have his say.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Chapman, for your patience. I'm not going to comment specifically on the Chief Executive's pay, but just to say that as Mr. Watson said, that figure includes the cost of the corporate management team. And just to clarify, the cost of the corporate management team this year has reduced by a third because of the senior management restructure. Yes. So it's very unfortunate that the figures indicate something different to what the reality is. Reality is those central overhead costs or central strategic costs have actually reduced significantly this year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chapman.
Just briefly to say that I'm pleased that we have discussed this. It is on social media, but I did pick up what you've said, the Chief Exec, and realise it was your department and the strategy and everything there. It wasn't just your pay rise. So I'm pleased that we are doing this.
Thank you, Mrs. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. Just wanted to add to that. It is unfortunate the way it's been communicated without an explanation. But I think it's also important to recognise that this has happened as a result of the work that Mr. Watson is doing to restructure the budgets, so they're more transparent, they're easier to manage in the future.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. The apportionment of the cost for the council has always been a tricky one. I spent 7 years as the portfolio holder of finance, and we struggled with it, and we had the wonderful phrase of wooden pound notes being apportioned, and I think in those days an awful lot of costs went on the theatre, and everybody said it's costing us an arm and a leg, and people shoveled costs around. I'm not saying Mr. Watson does that or an accountant would ever dream of shoveling costs around, would they, Chairman? No. But I'm pleased to hear the clarification. Councillor Risley, I think it speaks for us all that to get that clarification is welcome and is much needed. Going back to one of Mr Watson's earlier comments, it's more an observation that you're only reporting what you can report and not the hope value, which is absolutely right. This is an updating report. It is work in progress. And I would hope to see on the investment and development, the £1 million adverse. Once we've gone past quarter day, we're in a better position. As you know, Chairman, from a different committee that we're jointly on, that there is an improving position, and every bit of work that the team does on that is going to bring down that 1 million adverse, which will in turn reduce the overall debt, if you like, which we knew was coming, and we have dealt with that under successive meetings to bring it into the general fund working balance and restructure the accounts for next year and going forward. So I welcome this report. I think it's good to see this transparency, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next report to see it even better. But thank you, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I just want to reiterate to the Section 151 officer, I mean, the comparison, it would be appropriate for us to actually go back to the original budget and then compare it. Because what will happen is if you try and move that original budget figure, that's not what this council approved. So there are three figures. That's my main complaint. Complaint is that we should stick to what this council passed and then compare the actual figures. The excellent work you and the CEO and other senior managers are doing is actually noted and is welcome. And we have to compare it to the original budget, which the council passed. That's my biggest point. Yep, thank you. All right, any more questions? No? Excellent. We might finish early. Right. Task and finish group. Sorry, have I skipped something? The capital report was part of part of Bob. No, sorry, Mr. Watson, you want to finish up?
Yes, just to refer the councillors, the committee to the second or the third supplement report that was issued, and that is the capital programme report as at Q3, showing where we are. I will highlight the key points. The council is predicting to spend about £5 million of its original £14 million capital budget. That sounds like a lot of rephasing or a lot of the programme not spent, and actually we're looking to rephase £8.5 million worth of those budgets. Now, this isn't anything to do with not delivering the capital programme, it's to do with how we set the budgets on the capital programme. The budget was set at council last year in February, was based on a one-year programme. As you will all know, those that were at the council meeting, everybody was, on the 23rd of February, we set a 4-year capital programme. And as part of that, we're going to take the amounts that were never really intended to be spent in the first year of last year's programme and rephase them over the 4 years of the current capital programme, which is what happens with a lot of councils. It's just that switch between a single year budget, which meant we had to bid for all the money in year one, for not being able to spend it in year one, but that's when the bids were in, and we're now phasing over a 4-year programme. So we're going to rephase 8.5 million of the capital programme over the next year. And that's the key point around where we're going to at this stage and there. And again, I will highlight that since this report, the dates or the data in this report was created, which was the 31st of December, the executive has instructed myself with my team to go and talk to people on the capital programme to see which projects actually need to be rephased and any projects that may be put on hold due to the current financial situation of the council and the current cost increases we're seeing that in the construction industry for both labour and materials. And I fully expect that inflation rate has probably exceeded a great deal more since the current events that are happening in Ukraine and the cost of the fuel at the petrol pump prices for those who have seen it. So it's probably even more important that we revisit all our capital programmes and certainly the major projects to make sure that they are still viable, they are still within the original cost estimates, and if they're not, we have a requirement to bring them back to executive or even council to consider whether these projects go ahead, go on hold, or actually have more budget input into them if we can afford to do it. So that's the viability of those will be being tested over the next few months or weeks.
Any questions on capital expenditure at all? No? Good, excellent. Well done. No, it's coming. Public realm task and finish report now, which is agenda item 7, pages 33 to 42. I believe it should be Gavin or Adrian. Before we start, let me actually say something. Sorry, I want to. Yeah, sorry. Can I make a statement on this, please? I actually want to make it very clear to everyone here. The task and finish group was set up initially, and we provided the TOR. Unfortunately, change of staff, etc., etc. It's been rolling on, and last time when Mr. Watson joined, he wanted to provide a report. I said no because they were not ready. This time, it should have come to the task and finish group first, and then be published. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. It got published and it was picked up by my fellow councillor there, Councillor White, and then I raised it as well, that it should have gone to the task and finish group, then come to this committee. But it has already been published, so here we are with that thing. Councillor White.
I'd just like to reiterate that Councillor Galliford and myself had not been called to any meetings at all for the task and finish group, which we found quite disappointing, and that the report was published without any knowledge to us.
I add the same comment as Councillor White said. It's just been published without the knowledge, and I wanted to postpone it, but I decided not to, because if he did, there's another 3-4 weeks gone before it all comes. We have the same discussion. Councillor Galliford.
Just to reiterate, it is most disappointing. Whilst we're all very busy anyway, we do make time and to assure that we are part of these investigations, if you like. I know previous investigations I've been involved with, it's taken months and months and an extremely large amount of my time, but it has been worth it. We've had opportunities to cross-examine those involved. In this case, the report that we received earlier was a fait accompli, and despite us contacting you, Chair, you know, no meetings were arranged. There seemed to be no opportunity to cross-examine anyone. So it is extremely disappointing, I'm afraid, from that point of view. As far as the report's concerned, however, I feel that we have moved forward in a very positive way, so I don't have too many criticisms of the paper at this point in time. But what was the point in having a task and finish group when we really had no input? Thank you.
I can only say ditto. I agree with your sentiments, 100%. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. I will have a bit of mea culpa on this one, in that I wasn't part of the task and finish group, and I wasn't aware of how they worked within the council. I was under the impression that it would have been led by the chair of the task and finish group to convene the meetings with the reports. I also will admit that I felt the report had gone forward to yourself as the chair of the committee here, but apparently it hadn't. So I then intervened prior to this meeting to issue the reports out to go with the committee papers, because, as you say, to further postpone it would probably have caused more anguish and concern to people. I'm happy to talk through the report, even though it's done by the chief accountant, as he was the person tasked to complete it. But I think it's fairly comprehensive. I know you did ask me previously to confirm the actual outturn position on this project, and it was 4.8 million. So although there's an extra increase of 700,000 plus asked for, the actual additional cost that was spent was £400,000, which took it from the 4.4 budget up to 4.8 million.
Thank you very much. I mean, it is noted with what you said about it being published, etc. Again, we are disappointed the way it's been done, but we know when we have to do the next task and finish group, don't we? And Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a few points I'd like to speak to on this. Being one of the smallest borough councils in the area, I think it's most unlikely that we would develop a cadre of skilled project management officers in this council. We are a very small council, and sometimes I can see over many years where we do need more help coming in. Given that this could be the case in the future with any larger projects, and particularly larger projects, I believe that selected officers should receive specific project management where needed and training to be supported by external consultants, specifically in the early stages of any project, medium or larger. Because having been on the town centre working group when this was happening, I believe that a lot of our management team had a lot of work on of their own, and we should have had a specific project manager in on this particular one. From the start, well, right from the word go, we had, it sounds a simple thing, Chairman, but Noah Walk in Camberley was going to be refurbished. We started on that as a council to find, there's a Barclays Bank, if you know the Noah Walk, it was subsidence on that bank, on the wall, large oak tree, so it was going to have to come down. What wasn't looked at was that it was bird nesting season, and there was a bird nesting in that tree. That was the start of the delay of the project, which put it back for months, because the high street couldn't be started on until that was done. You know, sort of saw this process happening. Then very, very unfortunately, COVID came in. And again, the contractors were off with COVID or not working. So we got delayed there. And then the undertakings were discovered that weren't working. And then we couldn't get the spare parts for all these undertakings. So one thing, Chairman, and as councillors that were on that at the time, one thing led to another, to the delay, and obviously the further extra expensive that happened. But I do believe that had we had the project manager here and other officers trained within and expertise from outside, perhaps some of this might have been deferred. That's all I wish to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. I hate to hash an old subject, but if we actually had decent ISO processes, even if not ISO accredited in place, a lot of this actually wouldn't have happened. And actually most of the delays that Councillor Chapman have just referred to have absolutely nothing to do with good or poor project management. They're much more to do with the pandemic. I don't think you need to be a project manager to know that you can't take down an oak tree during bird nesting time, and anyone that has sat on a planning committee or received any planning training probably would have been aware of that. Yes, I think we need experts to do this job. I wouldn't want to put the responsibility and some of the responsibilities that we put on the officers, but I think ultimately we as councillors and the senior leadership team that enabled that to go forward in that process need to take some responsibility for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Any other points? What I would suggest that can we start? Councillor Bates, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My view is that this is a total disgrace, if I'm honest with you. It's not Mr. Watson's fault because he wasn't involved in this at the start. But over £700,000 of public money was not authorised. And now I'm hearing, I didn't know this until you've explained, but the Task and Finish group apparently haven't met and the report hasn't been signed off. I mean, there are a number of very, very serious questions indeed that need to be answered here. When did this overspend first become apparent to anybody in the council? Who then agreed the overspend? Who then agreed internally in the council that the second person, if you like, that to commit to this without any authority? What other projects are at risk? We've just talked about the capital programme. I'm very concerned that this could happen with other projects, that officers, for whatever reason, go off and have these commitments for things. We may have reviewed things, but nonetheless, this is obviously very, very serious indeed. Are the auditors aware, both internally and externally? And not a single one of those questions has been answered in the report. My own view is that you should not accept this report now, that actually the Task and Finish group should meet, which apparently you haven't done. You should consider the questions that I've raised and the other points that people have raised, and then you come back with a report that you are happy with, because this needs to be member-led. I do accept that many of the officers who are in the meeting today had absolutely nothing to do with this. And so I appreciate that it's important that we state that. But nonetheless, we have here a very, very serious governance issue that people appear to want to kind of, oh, well, it's one of those things. It's not one of those things. Over £700,000 of public money was committed by this council without authority. And that is far more, we talked about the chief executive's salary earlier. We're talking about far in excess of that. I think this is far worse, if I'm honest with you. And I don't think it's acceptable the way that we seem to be wanting to draw this to a close. We need proper answers here as to how this has happened, what steps are being taken to make sure this never happens again. There must be proper authority as soon as we become aware that there may be an overspend. And the monitoring officer's report on this is absolutely clear. It's not about the original authority and other things like that. That's fine. It's as soon as we're aware that we may be spending public money over and above that which is committed. And that is the issue. And that did not happen in this case. And that is something that we must make sure as members does not happen again. And therefore, my view is, and I'm sorry, I'm not on this group and you may have a different view, but I do think that Task and Finish group need to meet and need to look into those points and then come back with a report. So I can't propose that tonight, but I do think there are very, very serious issues here. That's why I wasn't prepared to agree it when we discussed this matter at full council. And it does sound to me as if we're still not at the bottom of it. And until we're at the bottom of it, we cannot go to our public and say that we're comfortable with how this is going forward. And so I'm certainly not happy, as you can tell. I think it is very poor indeed. And I would perhaps use stronger words. But yes, you can tell I'm really not happy at all.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bates. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think we should get back to this. 1 minute, Mr. Watson. I want to listen to Councillor Rice, the committee members first, and then I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Likewise, coming into this meeting, I wasn't aware of the issues regarding this, and listening to councillors speak, I'm actually very, very disappointed, and I would agree with Councillor Bates that this is not good enough. And frankly, I'm looking at page 35 of the reasons for recommendation, and it says, and I'm quoting here, the Task and Finish group is advised to note the findings of the Chief Accountant and consider the following recommendations. That has not happened. So therefore, I cannot approve this report. I cannot support this report going forward. And the Task and Finish group needs to meet and needs to follow the proper process. So I'm going to make the recommendation that this is deferred back to the Task and Finish group. Please allow me to speak, Chair, that this is referred back to the Task and Finish group, that they meet before the next Performance and Finance Scrutiny Select Committee, and then that is then referred back to. Because if this is going on, and if there has been an overspend of £700,000 that was not authorised, that is a serious breach of trust. And as Councillor Bates has said, if we talk about a problem of £75,000 regarding the Chief Executive's pay, if residents will be furious of an overspend that was not authorised. I want to know where that money was spent, and that was the point of this task and finish group. So therefore, I'm going to make that recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler.
I'd like to second that recommendation.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, absolutely right. And looking at the recommendations, there's two parts to this. There's what's happened and what's going forward. And I still think what's going forward is not strong enough. We need to look at how we structure large projects, how we deal with them going forward. At no stage, everybody's going to shout at me at this, but I can think of two projects that's recently been carried out by the county. And there was a very good project manager who was based here, and the Meadows was carried out on time, on budget, with minimal disruption, and the A30, there's one bit that's still not right, but the load, that has been carried out on time, within budget. And that was using a professional project manager who had overall authority. Yes, we came back to the officers, and it is ultimately the officers' responsibility. But we do need, in my business, we would never have carried this out without having a project manager sitting on the shoulder of the team. And I think that we should be, when we do these forward, I'm not saying that we should be employing one, because I don't think that's the right approach, but we should be having a pool of project managers, because it's a classic case, you're only as good as your last deal, quite frankly. But we should have some proper qualified project managers holding a hand and reporting back to the appropriate authorities within the council going forward. And I agree that this has got to go back, and it has to be looked at again, and we have to have some firm recommendations as how we go forward. Thank you.
Councillor, Mr. Watson, do you want to say anything, or you want us to take a vote on this? Okay, thank you. Right, well, I'm going to put it to a vote where we actually do not accept this report, yes, and then take the recommendation and take it back to the task and finish group for it to be completed. It's been proposed and seconded. Sorry, Councillor Wheeler.
I'm sorry, you're not taking it back to the task and finish group. You're taking it to the task and finish group, because we have not dealt with this.
That's exactly what I meant. Yeah. Anyone against? All four. Unanimous. Yes. Thank you. Sorry. Unanimous. Yes. Against first. Yeah, that would have been the minority. So, we will arrange for a meeting for the task and finish group to meet, discuss this report, and if we think there needs to be more work to be done, we'll give it back to the officers to deal with it. Thank you.
Chairman, sorry, just a further thought on that point. I think it would be inequitable to ask the task and finish group to report by the next meeting, but I think it might be helpful if this meeting had minutes or notes of the task and finish group as it's held, so that we can track progress, so that we can monitor the work of the task and finish group, who I think a marvellous job, but just a thought. En passant.
It is noted, Councillor Hawkins. Right, that's done. Agenda item 8, committee work program. We have one here. And are we happy with it? Do you want to add anything? I believe Mr. Watson did say there was an addition.
We're looking for an additional meeting, possibly to discuss staff chamber processes.
I raise the same point again. I mean, a Star Chamber is a new item which will come for an additional event. But CEO, I did raise the point last time. As the year goes on, the agenda item increases and the volume increases. It would be useful for you to relook at this whole program to see whether we can slot additional or spread it around in such a way that we don't have to sit here for 2 and 3 hours.
Chairman, thank you. So I've been with members in previous meetings where there's certainly been too many large items to really do justice in one agenda. So a big focus is going to be around good forward planning of agenda items, and then making sure that those agenda items are spread in a reasonable way across those available meetings to make sure that every single meeting has the right amount of business. For example, today's meeting, we're getting through the business because there's a lighter agenda much quicker than last time. And I think it just may be evening out the peaks in that workload. So it's all about forward planning and good early agenda management.
I must stress, I did raise this point last time. I mean, it seems that that work has not been done. If you would kindly take this on board and bring the next work agenda differently. Thank you.
And Chairman, it's not a piece of work that you do once and then it all gets resolved. This is about an ongoing focus on, do we have enough meetings, what agenda items are coming up, and can we identify the items with the meetings to make them manageable? And hopefully today's meeting is a good example of that working.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, I know obviously on the work programme, so obviously March 2023, we have the portfolio holders that we had this evening, but on the work plan, we don't have any other scheduled for the, that's fine. I knew it was just a mistake, but thank you, Catherine.
We'll feed the other ones in once we know what portfolios are and people's availability.
Right. You don't have any AOB, thank the Lord. Great. Thank you very much, folks, and have a good evening.
Chairman, thank you, members.